I was reading back on interesting articles to do with the state's investment in property and housing, and it's very clear that the state is one of the biggest players in the property market today, but you wouldn't think so, because state agencies and local authorities are renting and leasing properties back off the state. So if you look at the total investment by the state into the Ireland Strategic Investment Fund, which is basically to vulture funds and cuckoo funds, it adds up to 1,063 million in the recent past. Now, I say that to put in the backdrop of the attempts by the community of St Michael's Estate in Inchicore to forward the development of what is 9.2 acres of prime land in the middle of Inchicore for the sake of that community. For 21 years, the community around St Michael's have been fighting to regenerate in a sustainable way that very, very important community. And yes, thankfully Thornton Heights was built, but there's a big chunk of land lying empty. And we now have a designer talking to people on the regeneration board without knowing what costs the designer is working with. And what we need to find out here today, Minister, is where the regeneration of St Michael's is at. Will a certain cost be made known to the designer so we can have good quality affordable housing on that land, but not just good quality affordable housing, but affordable being set at not a share of the market, 25% below the market value, but a proportion of the income of people who will live in those dwellings. And this is a really important point for the regeneration of St Michael's, that it be publicly owned and funded in a way that the cost rental element will mean a proportion of your income is paid in rent rather than 25% less than the market value. That's meaningless, because that market value is a never-ending, ever onwards and upwards scale. And this would defeat the whole point of the struggle that that community has engaged in for the last 21 years.
As indicated by Minister English, I can confirm that any rent levels for the cost rental homes to be delivered in the Emmet Road development will not be directly related to or set based on tenant income or the market rent for the area. A central principle of cost rental is that the rent for the homes is a function of the costs incurred in financing, building, managing and maintaining them. There is a now clearly established legislative basis to operationalise this principle and for establishing the rent in a cost rental development. This can be found in Part 3 of the Affordable Housing Act of 2021. These provisions were approved by the Oireachtas in July of this year by 101 votes to 8. I would like to be clear that although cost rental will be public housing, it is not social housing. It does not use a differential rent structure. It is targeted at those individuals and families on moderate incomes above the eligibility threshold for social housing and who can afford to pay the cost rents. To illustrate this in practice, in terms of tenant eligibility, an upper limit of €53,000 annual household income after income taxes has been applied to the first cost rental projects. There is no lower threshold though tenants would obviously be required to be in a position to pay the cost rent from their income. To reiterate, the rents for cost rental properties are not set by market rents, but in line with the criteria outlined in the Affordable Housing Act. Any references to market rent for cost rental homes simply serve as relative comparisons. They demonstrate how much more affordable these properties are for the eventual tenants when compared to what is available on the private rental market. Consideration of market rents can also help target state funding supports for proposed cost rental schemes at areas where they will offer the most assistance to tenants who would otherwise be facing comparably high rents. The government's cost rental scheme is already delivering long-term homes to families at affordable and stable rents, using upfront capital subvention from the new cost rental equity loan scheme. Approved housing bodies are currently charging cost-covering rents at Taylor Hill in Balbriggan of €935 per month for two-bedroom homes, up to €1,150 per month for four-bedroom homes. A further 50 homes at Enniskerry Road, Dunleary, Rathdown, will be tenanted next month for €1,200 a month for modern two-bedroom apartments, with more to follow, including at Barnhall in Leixlip, County Kildare. These rents are affordable for the target cohort above the social housing income limits. It is anticipated that similar capital subventions will be utilised at Emmet Road to make the resulting cost rents as affordable as possible, including the provision of public land at no or low cost, upfront capital grants from the Exchequer and state assistance with loan financing through the Housing Finance Agency and the European Investment Bank. Thank you, Carla.
Well, when you include the provision of public land at no cost, I would assume so. It's public land and it shouldn't add to the cost of building homes on it. But I just want to go to your figures, because a combined income of 53,000 in two people working in the home would mean that they'd have to be on just above the minimum wage to meet the maximum threshold of 53,000 to qualify for affordable housing. And I think this makes a joke of what's been attempted. I remember in 2008 when Bernard McNamara, the previous public partnership developer who was to develop St Michael's, pulled out of the scheme, and the people protested at City Hall saying, "Greed, greed, how much do you need, Mr McNamara?" And I think here we have to be very careful. When we look at what is affordable for ordinary people on low incomes, we have to take into account their lives, their ability to pay, the sort of communities they want to live in, not the profit margins of the developers. And here is why I quoted those figures at the beginning, because the state has a fundamental role in financing such developments so that people can live quality and rooted lives in their communities.
Thank Deputy Smith and Costello for raising this important matter around St Michael's and how the rents would be set. Within the last year, the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage has developed an entirely new policy framework to enable development of cost rental housing in Ireland, culminating in its inclusion in the Government's Affordable Housing Act. The Minister has also rolled out funding for cost rental through the Cost Rental Equity Loan schemes for AHBs and the Affordable Housing Fund for local authorities. The Government's Housing for All plan included a number of significant improvements to the Affordable Housing Fund for local authorities above and beyond the previous Service Sites Fund, under which Dublin City Council had been approved for €18.7 million of funding. These changes include allowing the funding support to now exceed the previous maximum of €50,000 per affordable dwelling on a step scale up to €100,000 based on location and density, which is something that could assist the reduction in rents at this important site even further. When this capital subvention is combined with the utilisation of local authority land and the long-term low-interest finance available from the Housing Finance Agency and the European Investment Bank, the level of financial supports will have a real impact on the resulting rents that can be charged for these types of homes. These will not be linked to the market or tenant income and will be financially sustainable cost rents, as set out in the Affordable Housing Act. The Department of Housing fully supports the cost rental development and will continue to work with Dublin City Council to achieve the realisation of this development.